fresh air. How helpful would that be? Not helpful at this point, right? What I need at this point, if I've got acute appendicitis, what do I need? I need a surgeon who owns a knife, colored red knife. That's what I need, right? On the other hand, if I'm just looking to improve my physical fitness, I want to get a little bit more in shape and so forth, then it's a good idea to, eat my vegetables, go to the gym, get a little better sleep, get some fresh air and exercise, and so on. So again, my point here is that these are different processes. Both are important. And just to complicate things a little bit, not only are they important, different processes, but they're also related. And that's where things, I think, can get a little bit fuzzy. So take, for example, the case of appendicitis. Two people, one person in shape, one person not in shape. They both have appendicitis, which is likely to recover more quickly from the surgery. The person who's in shape, right? So if they've been using their green cape a lot, they're likely to be better off with the red cape procedure, right? Other way around, I have my appendix taken out, I get better now, I'm ready to go back. Then once I take care of the red cape procedure, I'm ready to go with Gina to the gym, right? So these are related processes, although they are different ones. So let's think about the results of our experiment. We began asking the question of whether we wanted the green cape or the red cape, and most of you chose the green cape. But I think we also can see that there is a value for the red cape as well. So perhaps what we really need is a reversible cape, because there are indeed sometimes when it's important to have positive psychology will turn you into a superhero. Isn't it great? There are times when you're right, it's important to have a red cape approach. When, for example, John Dewey talks about times when the privilege, so people in power, what do they want from their constituents? They want everybody to be moving along just fine and smiling and not causing problems. And sometimes it's important to stand up and say, stop. There is injustice happening right here, and it makes me angry, and I'm not just going to walk along and allow it to happen, right? So there's definitely a time for a red cape standing up and making yourself known, making yourself counted, and so forth. There's also, I think, a tendency for us to be more sensitive to red cape opportunities than we are to green cape opportunities, right? Because problems scream at us. Opportunities whisper. And so it's also important for us to have a sense of the green cape side of our possibilities as human beings, so that we can learn to think about opportunities that open up when we look at the other side of the equation, the other side of the cape. And I don't know about you, but in my life, the red cape processes tend to take care of themselves more than the green cape processes. So maybe what we need is a reversible cape to be happy, and maybe what we need is to use the green side much more often. And I think that's where positive psychology comes in. I think positive psychology is by no means discounting the importance of the red side, but it's saying, there is a value to the green side. And what happens if we study it rigorously, scientifically? And what happens if we look very carefully to ways of applying what we learn in that process to our lives? So perhaps that's what we want to focus on more, and positive psychology is one way to help us do that. So thank you for helping me out with the thought experiment. It wasn't so bad. And now what I'd like to do is to continue with a very brief scientific overview of positive psychology. And I'll be brief in part because I think a lot of you are already familiar with it, and in part just as a matter of time. So as you no doubt know, positive psychology was spearheaded by Martin Seligman, and he was the president of the American Psychological Association in 1998, and this was one of his presidential initiatives. And in his presidential address to the APA that year, he said, look, psychology is half-baked. Mainstream psychology is doing pretty well in the identification and cure of mental illness, but what about the other side? We're not doing so well at the identification and cultivation of mental strengths. How about if we do something about that? And so Seligman and Csikszentmihalyi later defined positive psychology in terms of positive subjective experience, positive individual traits, and positive institutions. That positive psychology is the scientific study of these three areas. And we'll talk more about them shortly. Now, some of you may be saying, haven't positive psychologists heard of humanistic psychology? How about community psychology, health psychology, developmental psychology? There are these other types of psychology that have had similar emphases. And I guess what I would say to that is that that's true. And I would see positive psychology as a kind of an umbrella term, maybe a term of invitation, where we can all sort of come together with this focus and share research perspectives and so forth. One thing I think is an important distinction to make, and that is that positive psychology really puts an emphasis on rigorous empirical methods. And I know that some of these other areas have had some empirical tradition, but I don't think any of them have had quite the robust tradition that positive psychology really insists on. So that's one thing maybe that distinguishes it from some of these other areas. In the decades since Marty Seligman founded positive psychology, it's grown by leaps and bounds. Tens of millions of dollars have been raised for research. There are now hundreds of researchers across the United States and around the world working in positive psychology. There are international conferences that are happening regularly. And there's a burgeoning literature. Some 3 or 4 at least academic journals have been founded specifically around positive psychology, which is very encouraging to see. In terms of education, the first degree program in positive psychology was opened in 2005 at the University of Pennsylvania, our MAP program. And we have a couple of graduates from that program here tonight. Would you guys stand, Lisa and Ivor? Thank you. Lisa and Ivor went through our 1-year intensive study program. And a nice thing about the nice feature of the program is that it's an executive education model. So we have classes 1 weekend each month. Actually, this weekend, which is why I have to leave tomorrow afternoon so I can get back for classes because I'm kind of playing hooky. But we have classes 1 weekend a month, and then in the intervening times we have distance learning modules. And so Lisa and Ivor both flew up every month from Florida to Pennsylvania. Which was pretty tough during the winter, but not as tough as the summer came on, I guess. Some of their colleagues flew in from places as far away as Europe and Asia. We've got a student from Australia this year flying in every month to our program, so that's really exciting. Our first student from Africa this year is a woman who is from Botswana, but she's working in the Sudan in the Darfur peace process. She's a UN civilian peacekeeper, and she believes that positive psychology can play a very important role in peacekeeping. So that's a really exciting application. If you would like more information, you can go to penpositivepsych.org. Claremont Graduate University has now started a PhD program, a research PhD program, which is very exciting as well. We've started the International Positive Psychology Association. In 1 year, it went from having no members to having 4,000 members in 80 countries. So I was telling somebody earlier, it's kind of one of those cases where if you build it, they will come, only we hadn't quite gotten it built yet. So it's like before you build it, they will come, which is very exciting to see. I'd like to invite each of you to become a member of IPA if you would like, and support our mission. And you will have free quarterly calls with leading researchers. This last year, Marty Seligman, Ed Diener, Sonia Lubomirsky, and Ruth Veenhoven were the callers. You get a free monthly newsletter and reduced or free journals and a reduced registration for the World Congress, to which I would like to invite all of you to as well. And that will be happening this summer, June 18 through 21 in Philadelphia. And some of the major speakers include Marty Seligman and Philip Zimbardo, Ed Diener, Richard Layard of the UK, and Mike Csikszentmihalyi. So we would very much invite you to welcome you to be there with us this summer. This is the kind of question that makes a philosopher salivate. Unfortunately, we don't have 4 or 5 hours right now to scratch the surface of this question. So what I'd like to do is to talk a little bit about a few approaches to this question in positive psychology by referring to Martin Seligman's book, Authentic Happiness. And those of you who are familiar with the book, how many